Welcome to the Hunt Fish Travel podcast, the first and longest running female hosted hunting podcast. It's all deer all the time. Whether it's public or private, she's helping you navigate your trip of a lifetime. And now here's your hostess, Carrie Zilka.
This episode is brought to you by Real Avid. Check out their fabulous line of firearms tools. My newest personal favorite is the pistol tool, a portable toolkit for any pistol. The number of tasks the pistol tool can handle is astounding. Mounting accessories, field disassembly, adjusting laser sights, changing grips are only a few things that this tool can do. The compact design also fits conveniently into most standard pistol magazine pouches. Check it out at realavid.com. This episode is also brought to you by Cryptic, my newest obsession in camouflage. Their Highlander pattern is out of this world in my opinion. A few people have mentioned that they haven't been able to find the website because I did not spell it out. Cryptic has a unique spelling. It's K-R-Y-P-T-E-K. Cryptic with a K. Cryptic was derived from the words kryptos and technology. Kryptos is a Greek word for hidden or secret, and the word techno comes from the Greek word tech, meaning art, craft, or skill. Therefore, the meaning of cryptic is intended by the founders as the art of being hidden from the elements of Mother Nature, protected, secret craft and skills, superior field craft and skill sets shared by the elite. I personally recommend the ladies line. They have an early season shirt and pants and a medium weight jacket that I'm really digging. According to the website, it was designed to be layered according to the temperature and your exertion level. This exceptionally durable jacket is ideal for mild to cool conditions and was field tested over 2 years in the Alaskan wilderness. The materials are lightweight and breathable, and they fit really well. So go to Cryptic, KRYPTEK.com for more info. Welcome to the Hunt Fish Travel podcast. I am your hostess, Carrie Zilka, and this week we're going to do another crossover episode, very similar to episode 119 that we did with Brandon Hammonds of the Take Aim podcast and Rob Sharkey from Sharkey Outfitters, who actually recently just started his own podcast. It's pretty cool. It's a little more agriculturally based, but there's some deer hunting stuff in there too, so you should definitely go and check it out. And I'm not saying that because he's my best bud. I'm just saying that because he does a really good job. Have you listened to it yet, Eric?
I've not. I would love to. How do I find it?
You can find it on iTunes or Stitcher Radio. Just search for Shark Farmer.
Shark Farmer? Nice.
Yep, Shark Farmer. Yeah, because his last name is Sharky. It's hilarious.
Yeah. And I met him at the ATA last year with you, and he's a pretty cool guy.
Yeah. And that voice you hear is Eric Clark from Where to Hunt. Is it just Where to Hunt? It's not Where to Hunt.
Yeah, I've dropped
anymore,
Wisconsin.
Right? Yeah.
Yep, going big. Sorry, Wisconsinites.
Now it's just Where to Hunt. I know, because we all want to hunt everywhere. Is this the first time you've been on my podcast?
Yeah, I think so. I think you were on Wildernet once, and I think I had you on Where to Hunt.
Yeah.
Or maybe I was on your podcast. No, I think I was on your podcast once.
I thought so.
I think maybe you haven't been on mine yet, so we'll have to do that.
That could be. I'm coming up on my 5-year anniversary for Hunt Fish Travel. Did you know that?
Wow.
So when I'm like, have you been on my podcast? I'm like, I don't even know because it could have been 4 years ago. Okay. Well, tonight we're going to talk to Kip Adams from the QDMA. But before we get Kip on the line, Eric and I were out for opening weekend here in Wisconsin. We had the bow opener, and you were hunting public land, correct?
That is correct. I was out first thing, and you're not going to like what I have to say about it, and neither will I, but we'll get to it.
Lay it on me.
Oh, my God. So I am almost ashamed to call myself a bow hunter.
No.
If you ever heard me on the Wildernet podcast, I have proclaimed over and over my hatred for mosquitoes. I don't think there's anything I hate more than mosquitoes. Red lights are probably second place, but that's a far distant second. I went and hunted a marsh, not thinking this through all the way. And with all the rain and stuff like that, I got bugged out in like 10 minutes after the half-hour walk in.
Dude, don't you own a thermocell?
Yep, it just I couldn't deal with it. They overpowered me. I've been to the Boundary Waters. I've never experienced mosquitoes like this in my entire life. It was too much, and I was like, holy crap! I actually can't take this. I actually can't do it. It was insane.
That's crazy.
Yep, I'm just waiting for the hot weather and rain and mosquitoes to go away because I can't take it. Or I got to just go to a different spot that's not a marsh.
Good luck with that with all the rain that we've had this week.
Yep. So my first experience was, a year of anticipation, lots of excitement. I even got a new bow this year, so I couldn't have been more excited to get out there.
Ooh, what did you get?
I got a bear. It's awesome. It's like it's super quiet. It's got enough speed. I mean, it's very accurate. I like it a lot. I was shooting an ancient Dart and Viper dual cam, and this is like, I feel like I freaking made a total upgrade. I don't even know how I was shooting the other one before.
That's awesome. Isn't that the best feeling?
Yeah, I'm addicted to it. I can't stop. I've been shooting like every freaking week.
Well, I normally hunt public, but this year
you were in Buffalo.
Dude, somehow this lease landed in my lap. I don't even know what happened. It all happened in like 4 days, and I was like, here's my money. Just take it. Take it right now.
Because I've talked to you in the past, and you had some things to say about lease hunting. So
right?
For you to have pulled the trigger, it's got to be good.
Yeah, because I swore never again, no leases, never again, ever again, ever again. And here I am with 185 acres in Buffalo County.
Do you have access to the whole 185 yourself?
Yes. Yeah.
It's all to you?
I share it with 2 other guys who have multiple leases. So they're rarely there. So I walk onto this property. They've had it for like 7 years. It's got about 20 stands already on the property.
Wow.
The place has been well maintained, and there's a camper for us to sleep in.
That's like, well, how could you even ask for more?
And it was for the exact same amount of money that I paid for that shitty ass 35 acres in Warshar County. With that cluster, I was like, holy crap, this is like the exact same amount of money. I'm in. Here, just take my money.
Unreal.
Super nice guys. They both live in the Milwaukee area. So
did you see anything, or what happened?
I did. So I took a half day on Friday and went up there and did some glassing. And they had a couple of trail camera photos that they caught in November, just deer that had survived the season, and they're really nice bucks. And there was one on the trail camera photos that was a nice 12-pointer.
Oh.
And I saw him Friday night in the far field up against the corn, and I was like, oh, I'm so sitting that stand tomorrow night. Oh my God. He was awesome. It was just fun watching tons of does, and there was 2 bucks in the other far field, and the property is shaped kind of like a W, so it has 2 ridges running right through the middle. And then, oh my God, and I almost got trampled. So I'm pretty confident in my scent killer product. I was using Dead Downwind. Pretty confident, because I'm laying, and everything's in alfalfa, so I'm laying on this like rise, and I'm just glassing, and I hear this snort. And, like, it sounded like a herd of damn elephants behind me. Scared the bejesus out of me. And I turn around, and there's, like, 4 does running away. They must have come within 10 feet of me, not realizing I was there.
Neither one of you knew each other was there.
Seriously, about got my ass run over.
Holy crap.
I know. And then they came back, and they were, I don't know, 30 yards away. Yeah, because they're like, what are you? What are you? Blowing and stomping. And I'm like, for the love of God, okay, shoot. Y'all need to go. And of course, that
now
buck,
every animal in the forest knows you're there.
Right? That buck's looking up, and he's like, okay, I see you guys. And I'm like, all right, well, I'm done with this. So I got up, and it was dusk anyway. And I walked down the ridge, and I walked up along the road. He watched me like a hawk until I got far enough away that he was like, all right, she's not coming at me, and just put his head back down to eat more.
Wow.
Like, oh my God.
What a confident bastard.
Right?
You magnificent beast.
I was like, I'm so confused. This is not how normal deer react on public.
Yeah, no doubt. That's a good point. Interesting.
No pressure at all. These guys have no pressure. So it was cool. And then I saw a bunch of does on Saturday, but it's too early. They manage that farm for bucks, for big bucks. So it's too early in the season.
You want some does there for later in the season. Yep.
I want that 12-pointer to stick around. I don't want him going nowhere else and looking for some lovin'.
Well, that's freaking still exciting. It's better than my freaking opening morning. Well, I was like, if any deer comes near me, I'm going to look like a flailing idiot because I can't keep these bugs off me. Swarm of freaking devil bugs trying to suck my blood. It was just the worst. And I know it sounded like a lot of people had issues with bugs.
They were atrocious. I got chewed up. My thermostat wasn't working correctly. Like, I would hit the igniter, you do it like 3 times to get it going, and it would make that popping noise. And then I would check it a couple minutes later, and it would be out. So I'd click it a bunch of times again. So I might have to get a new one.
So the thermostat normally is amazing.
It's awesome.
Here's what happened. I have no doubt that thing would have worked fine, but here's the problem. I didn't have the switch all the way to on, so when I was hitting the igniter, it wasn't doing anything. I was like, what the hell? And I was so frantic that like I couldn't doing things proper. So then I finally figured, I was like, oh my gosh, this whole time I didn't have it on. So I finally get it going. I see the little red glow. I'm like, oh yes, that's it right there, the glow.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God, it's going to take this thing like 15 minutes to get going. And I was out there with two friends, and they were in different spots. They both sat down before I did. So they were already getting eaten up as I was still walking to my spot. And by the time I sit down, I have a couple text messages waiting for me saying, dude, this is bad. This is real bad.
They're horrible. We need that first frost. Get rid of them.
Yeah, even if it would have worked, my thermostat would have worked and kicked in, I would have felt bad for making those guys suffer. So I'll call the day and got breakfast instead.
Right. I know. Once it finally got going, because they were just on me, and I was like, oh my God. And there was the back of my shirt must have ridden up just enough so that there was maybe like an inch of, skin showing.
Yep.
And I'm
they're on it.
It's like I have a red belt on now. I'm like, oh, you bastards.
I don't know how they find those spots. Like the only parts were showing were like my neck and my hands. And I turned my light on. There was like 6 on my left hand. I'm like, what is going on right now? And then you hear me in your ears, and then that's where you just go crazy,
I know.
So I lost it. I just lost it.
I know. And it was hot too. Like, so
yeah, it was.
sweaty.
And I went out in the morning, and I don't know if it rained the night before, or if it was just that much condensation and dew, but I was drenched. I was going through all this tall grass. Yeah. So I get there and I'm soaking wet with sweat and probably dew. I don't know.
Yep.
And then you get the bugs. I was like, this is rough.
I know. Me too. Climbing up into that stand. And you know how it's hard, like, because then your pants are wet and they just like cling to your skin and they don't have any
no
give.
Elasticity, yeah.
First world problems.
So already opening day, I'm already like,
I know, right?
It's brutal. Dang it. And then, so you love it and you hate it at the same time, and it's all worth it in the end. It's just,
I know.
I was looking forward to a nice crisp fall morning and just kind of taking it all in. Instead, I get that. So expectation versus reality didn't really line up.
I know. Always opening weekend never turns out the way I think it's going to. So
yep.
That's the fun of it. But
I did buy a turkey tag this year for the first time ever, and so now I'm like, all right, well, if I get bored and I see a turkey, I'll just do that.
Hell yeah.
Maybe. I mean, we'll see. It'll be the time of bucks right there going, yeah, you should have shot me.
I know, right? Well, why don't we give Kip Adams a call and see if he's ready?
Sounds good.
Kip Adams.
Hi, Kip. It's Carrie Zilka.
Good, Carrie. How are you doing?
I am doing good. And on the line, we have Eric Clark from the Where to Hunt podcast.
Hey, Eric. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing good, thanks.
Fantastic.
We were just trying to figure out, where are you? Are you in Georgia?
No, I'm in Pennsylvania. I live in northern Pennsylvania.
That's right. Did you guys have opening day yet, or are you one of the October 1st ones?
Our season always starts the last Saturday in September or the 1st in October. And this year it happens to be the 1st in October. Okay. So our archery season always starts on Saturday. There is a place in southeastern PA, a special regs area that started last Saturday, but 99% of the state this year will start October 1st.
All right.
That's exciting.
I know. Everybody's like, you guys start so early in Wisconsin, and I'm like, I don't know. Seems normal to me.
We just can't wait.
I know.
When I was in New Hampshire starts September 15th. And I vividly remember opening day, sitting there, just sweat just pouring off you, going, what in the world am I doing here? Then you remember, hey, it's opening day, I wouldn't miss it for the world. But certainly it was always a hot opener.
Yeah, we were just talking about Wisconsin's opener was last Saturday, and we were just, between the mosquitoes and then the humidity and everything being just drenched Saturday morning, it was slightly uncomfortable for both of us.
Yeah, it was brutal.
I believe it.
But it is what it is. I mean, they've been putting them down already, so you see what's going on out there. It's like, holy cow.
Yeah.
Maybe I should get back out there and deal with the mosquitoes.
I know, right? Suck it up, Buttercup, for the big buck.
I have a group of landowners that borders our camp. Most of them are from southern Pennsylvania. I literally live right on the Pennsylvania-New York border in north-central Pennsylvania. But we had our camp work day on Saturday, and I invited our neighbors over that night. It's a QDM co-op. Basically, just to shake hands, and everybody's talking about what they're seeing and what's going on. And long story short, 2 of the guys that were there that night went home the next morning and sent me a picture of their friend who killed a 180-inch deer in southeastern PA on Saturday. So big deer. And they kill them like that every year down there now in that part of the state. Really easy winters, lots of agriculture, lots of land that's off limits to hunting. So, those deer get old in people's backyards, and man, for folks who have a little bit of land and some access, they kill some whoppers down there.
So what would you say is the number one question hunters ask you about hunting the rut?
Well, by far, the question I get asked the most about that is people ask me, when is the rut going to happen in my area this year? And, there's so much misinformation out there about how moon phase drives the rut and everything else. And so the reality of it is, though, I tell folks, if you live in the vast majority of the United States or Canada, the rut's going to happen at the exact same time it did last year, and it's typically right in mid-November. There's several states in the southeastern U.S. that are widely different. And actually, there's a rut in the United States every month of the year from July through February. You literally could hunt a rut somewhere in every single one of those months. And so almost that's all in the southeastern U.S., and that's mostly related to the genetic restocking days when we move deer in there from different areas. They've held the dates of when they bred for that long that it's still just genetically into those herds, and they can't get it out of them. But for the 90% of deer hunters who live outside of the extreme southeastern U.S., it's going to happen in mid-November. And states across the whitetails range collect data on fetuses every spring, and from that they can backdate to figure out exactly when those does were bred, and conception dates pretty regularly will peak mid-November. Now, that certainly doesn't mean that does aren't bred outside that, and some does will be bred, much earlier than that, and, some a bit later, but the vast majority of deer are bred at that time. So, regardless of when moon phase is, regardless of, what the weather is, it's going to happen then. So that at least lets us know as hunters, some years it tends to be a lot more intense than others. If the weather just really hits a rate to encourage lots of daytime activity of deer, but you can bank wherever you are this year, it's going to be that time again. So if it's mid-November, be in the woods.
If you could pinpoint 2 days to be in the woods, 2 days that should not be missed, what would they be? Like, what actual days, in your opinion?
My personal favorite is November 6th, and that has, nothing to do with being the best every year. That was just one of the absolute best days I have ever had in the woods in my life. So I like that day. Really, Halloween is the trigger that really flips the switch for when deer are really into that breeding activity. So from Halloween on, it is really good. In my home state of Pennsylvania, research shows that the vast majority of does are bred over a 10-day period from November 10th to November 20th, which means from a hunting end, if that's when the majority of does are being bred, the best time to be in the woods is right before that, because that's when most bucks are on their feet finding those does. So typically the first week in November is the absolute best time to be in the woods in most states. So and during that first week, my personal favorite is November 6th. So if I had to give you 2 days, I'd give you November 5th and November 6th.
Awesome.
That's fascinating. Halloween is always like the benchmark for me. So that's great that lines up with what you're telling us, because it makes me feel like I've done something right in my hunting career.
That is awesome.
I know you have 2 more that you're going to tell us that people ask you most frequently, but I'm curious about how does a pre-rut play into that? What can you be doing there? How does that impact a hunter's?
That's really when you start seeing most of that or more of that buck activity. And now that GPS collars have been out for a couple of decades, there's lots of research studies now where they have these GPS collars on bucks and can follow them through the course of the year, and then see how their behavior changes during the pre-rut, and then how the amount of movements that they have each day changes. And so we know a lot more about those movements than we did even 5 or 10 years ago. And essentially what happens is during that pre-rut, which is really during that November time period, bucks are increasing daily movements. They're checking rubs, they're checking scrapes, or they're scraping more, advertising themselves. So the amount of behavior, starts to ramp up. So from a hunting end, that is the perfect time to be in the woods and be watching, because you can monitor how close the rut is getting really by monitoring scrape use, because scrape use will continue to increase through the pre-rut, and it'll peak about a week to 2 weeks before the majority of breeding happens. So if you keep an eye on the amount of scrapes in the area that you're hunting, you'll see more activity leading up, and that's a really good cue for you to know, okay, these bucks are on their feet, they're moving, and pretty soon when, the majority of the breeding happens, then deer sightings often plummet because those bucks are with does, and, they tend to be locked down with them. So from a hunter's perspective, it's far better to be hunting, the tail end of that pre-rut period when bucks are on their feet more than any other point. And you can watch that literally by monitoring scrape use wherever you are.
Well, okay, let me ask you, though. So as far as monitoring the scrape use, I'm assuming you have to walk to that. Aren't you worried about, busting out the bucks and driving them off the land?
You certainly can, and I would be very careful about that. A much better way to monitor that is literally with either trail cameras that you're only checking every few or every several days. Maybe you have the ones that text you the picture now, or you can scout from afar by, particularly if you're in any agricultural area or field area, be watching scrapes, along the edges of fields. So now you're right, Carrie. You don't need to be in the woods bumping those, adding extra scent. So it's much smarter to do that from afar.
Okay, that makes sense. And I'm assuming most scrapes are they're used every year, correct? So, you could set up a camera in August over a scrape that might be probably used towards the end of October?
Yeah, deer literally, scrape year-round, all 12 months. Bucks and does will use them. They just tend to use them a lot more during the breeding season. But I always start... So let me answer your question first. Yes, they will use some scrapes year after year after year. A lot of them, though, they just make, in a new spot each year. And as soon as it makes one, multiple deer will use it because that essentially is the bulletin board. Where you hang your business card and other people go and hang their business card and see who's been there. That's exactly what a scrape is. So as soon as a deer makes one, other deer use them as well to advertise themselves and to see who's in the area. So I always start making mock scrapes, in September, putting cameras up way before I start seeing much scraping activity at all, because as soon as I do that and put a camera on it, then bucks will almost immediately begin using that as well. So, so yeah, it's a great way for me to monitor, okay, here we go, they're starting, behavior's starting to ramp up a little bit, and that just continues to peak or climb until it peaks just before peak of the rut.
And then and by creating your own mock scrapes, then you're not in there looking for the new scrapes that they might be making around October 1st and bumping them out.
Yeah, that's true. And, and I often make them just right along well-traveled trails. If it's in part of the area that I happen to be, checking the stands or checking some habitat work, deer want to, or deer would prefer to have scrapes along, the edges of two vegetation types. That's why they're so popular around fields. That's why you often see them around the edges of food plots. So they want them to be in areas where a lot of deer are going to come into contact with them. So it's pretty easy to either find an active one or pick a spot to make a mock scrape without getting, back into bedding areas or into deep cover or anything like that.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. I don't do much with scrapes. I should.
Yeah. Well, apparently. I hunt a lot of public land, so it's like,
Yeah, finding scrapes out there, you're like, oh,
this is probably from a hunter.
Yeah.
That is true. It certainly can be different on public land, and particularly from a monitoring end. So yeah, and there's lots of hunters out there making mock scrapes. So you can take a look and see. Often you can see a deer's hoof tracks inside it. So at least have an idea of, even if a hunter made it, is an actual deer using it.
Deer are tending to, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So what would be your next most popular asked question about the
I will get people that will call me and say, you know what, I have seen almost no activity. Why didn't I see much rut activity in my area? And I have been on that side of the fence as well in some years. And I used to believe that if it was really warm, that deer were just breeding at night and not so much moving as much during the day. Since then, I have learned through some of the new GPS studies that that's actually not true. That even if it is warmer, those deer are still moving during the day, which was kind of a surprise to me. But so I think what's happening in some areas where people just aren't seeing that much activity, it comes down to a couple of things. One, how much pressure are you putting on the deer herd in your area? Because nothing will change, deer's behavior faster than when they know they're being hunted or there's a bunch of human pressure. So we see that a bunch in public areas where hunting pressure is very high, or even on private lands where hunters just aren't that careful about scent control or spooking deer from their stand. So it's a very, very safe bet that middle October deer are going to be breeding either on the property you're hunting or certainly right around it. So if you are not seeing any of that activity, it's one of a couple of things. One, you've either spooked deer out of there or they're uncomfortable being there, or two, habitat just isn't that good there and it's far better someplace close by. And it really hit me several years ago. We were on our farm hunting. My best friend was hunting the other side of it, and I had a phenomenal day in the stand. It was early November. I saw, I don't remember now, 7, 8, 9 different bucks. By noon that day, they were just crawling around me. And I thought, man, my buddy has got to be having a great day as well. Got down that night, we saw each other, and all he did was complain about he only saw a couple of deer all day. And it hit me that I was just in the right spot, even though we weren't all that far apart. So fast forward a couple of days, the role was exactly reversed. He was covered up with deer, and I got almost skunked. So it really made me realize that even though you're in the woods, it's a good day, you're in, even if it's a good spot, sometimes there's just not a hot doe around you. And unless you are in a really, really good travel corridor where bucks that are cruising are forced to go by you, it can be a pretty quiet day. If you're in areas that are mostly agricultural with small woodlots, that doesn't happen as much because deer are forced into those areas to travel more. But if you're in areas where there's big woods, like a lot of the Northeast and a lot of the upper Midwest, you really have to be keyed into exactly where those deer are, or even while that rut is happening at full pace, you may miss out on a lot of it. So that's definitely the second most asked question that I get.
Let me ask you, if you don't have any hot does in the area, how would you go about fooling them? Could you use a doe decoy and then put down some doe and estrus scent? Or
you certainly can. You can do that.
Could you fool them?
As much as anything, it's bucks do not determine that does are in heat by that estrus urine. Urine from a doe, just like anything else, it can certainly attract deer. A buck tells a doe is in heat literally by her secretions that she has, and when she stops to stand, and that's really the key. If she won't stand, she's not ready. But they use urine, to keep deer in an area to know who is here. They urinate all the time, leaving their calling card. So you certainly can use a decoy, for a visual thing. You certainly can use some scent to try to draw deer to that area. And in many cases, at that time of year, does have been harassed to the point where the places that they want to be most often are the areas that are just thick cover, partly because they've been pushed by hunters, but in many cases even more so because they have just been harassed to no end by bucks, and particularly younger bucks. Yeah. So they can get into those really thick areas and at least have a little bit of an opportunity to relax, whereas the deer have to work their way through them to get to them. So when in the pre-rut, as it's leading up to it, I'm often hunting food sources because that's where does want to be, which means the bucks will be there. As we get into a lot of breeding, I change almost exclusively to areas where I know deer are, it's a travel corridor where deer are covering large areas. And then when it gets to the point where deer are breeding a bunch and sightings really drop, it's almost worthless to hunt anywhere except thick areas and then in the bedding areas where the does can get in to try to get a little relief, because the woods in many cases just seem to be almost empty otherwise.
Interesting.
So is that a lot of that data, or everything you're saying is really, I'm very tuned in. A lot of that's coming from the data from those GPS tracking collars, like a doe bedding down in like a real thick area or something to that effect. Is that the kind of stuff you're seeing on like when you're looking at the GPS trackers? That is, yep.
That's so cool. You can take a look at some of those where they go in and actually see, where these deer specifically have bedded. And in some cases, it's amazing that we ever kill any of them. there is some tremendous data out of Pennsylvania right now that Penn State is doing, where they're collaring these deer and following them through the course of a year. And these bucks have their home range, and they're going traveling throughout it. And as soon as our rifle season arrives, they move to a tiny portion of it and basically don't move for a couple of weeks while those hunters are in the woods. And if they have gone, the researchers, and actually checked some of those areas to see this for both bucks and does, what is there, what makes them want to get there. And in almost every case, it's a steep slope, it's heavily wooded, extremely tough to get to, where the current scent patterns are right in their favor. They could smell something coming up the hill, and just extremely, extremely difficult for anybody, man or coyote or anything, to get close to these animals without them knowing it. Now, obviously, all deer aren't afforded that type of cover where they can do that. If that was the case, we would kill almost none of them.
I feel that way some years.
I know, and I agree. Yeah. So, but I think that pattern holds true, even if a deer's in there where it just doesn't have a mountain or doesn't have really, really thick cover. I think it will use the thickest cover that it has, or the areas that have the least amount of human scent. So I think it's all relative to what the deer has to use for that. And but that pattern typically holds true, where they do what they can to be as secure as possible and as removed from where humans are going to be as they possibly can.
So if you're a gun hunter and you can only hunt the second weekend of the 9-day season, how do you recommend that you even go after them then? I mean, if they're hunkered down, it's not like you can go in there and kick them out like you can.
Yeah, some people do, and that's why driving is still a popular hunting technique in a few areas. Yeah. But if that's the case for me, I would take a look at wherever. If I was hunting public land, I would get literally as far from the access points as I possibly could, just understanding, that everybody has coming in a few limited number of places and tend to hunt closer to those access places than farther away. So I would be there way earlier than everybody else and just absolutely get as far from them as possible. If it was private land and just knowing that there has been some pressure and those deer had been bumped, I would use some of that same tactics again and just try to hunt an area where I know others haven't. In some cases on private land, that may mean being pretty close to a camp or something else where, if people are leaving and going a long ways from camp, I have numerous occasions seeing deer that ended up hiding in some thick areas or some secure cover, not all that far away from our camp, simply because nobody ever hunted there.
The GPS tracking data that on these surveys that have been collected, if someone wanted to look at that, where would they go to even find out that information?
Some of it is available from the researchers. For instance, Pennsylvania Game Commission's website has some of that data on there now, and certainly the results of the studies that have been done with it. I don't know how many of the GPS colored maps that they have on there. I have seen the professor. I actually have given a couple of presentations at the same place he has, so I've seen him give a presentation using some of that data. So I know it is available. I'm not exactly sure how much of it they provide right now because the study or the project is still ongoing. But I would guess when it's done, probably all of that becomes available for people to see. I do know that I have seen a fair amount of it presented at deer conferences throughout the years, and we get a hold of some of it and publish it in our Quality Whitetails magazine and use it in our deer steward classes. But yeah, you're right. It's not available to the average hunter unless they see it published somewhere, in a magazine or in a journal or whatever.
Right. How long?
It would just be interesting to see.
I wonder how long it's going to be until they start sticking GoPros on these deer.
There's actually a researcher in Texas that is doing something very similar to that now, putting a video camera on the radio collar, and what they're using for are food habit studies. So they're going in and actually doing food studies like what researchers have for years and years, and then they're comparing it to the camera because they can see with the camera exactly what the deer are eating, and just trying to compare and say, okay, are these browse studies that we're doing to look at what deer are eating and what we're estimating from, is that actually what deer are really eating based on the video evidence that they're using? So They're just starting this. It's in the early stages, but it's some really cool technology that they're using.
That is cool.
It's fascinating.
I know, right? Like, wouldn't you like to just pore over the data just to be like nerdy metric?
My God, I already can't stop looking at maps. If you put deer data on it, I'd be
I know.
And that's the thing, with particularly the GPS collars. I mean, you get so much information, or at least you have the opportunity to get so much that you almost have to have a graduate student to sit there, for months or years poring over the data. Literally get, your obviously the location, but you also can then get temperature at that spot. I've been with QDMA for years now, and prior to that, I was the state of New Hampshire's deer and bear biologist, and we were putting these GPS collars on bears, and the data we were getting back told us where they were, but they also told us, the ambient temperature of where it was, so then we could look at that versus the daytime temperature to see, what they were using for cover. It gave us the amount of up, down, and side-to-side head movement. So if the animal was stationary, we would know, was it actually resting or was it really feeding? Was its head moving? So it's insane, what amount of information that you can get from those collars today. And fortunately, there's lots of researchers looking at that stuff and learning more about deer every day.
That is really cool. That is so cool.
Wow.
We're such nerds. The three of us are all being all nerdy right now. Like,
could do it all day.
So what will be the number 3 top most asked question about hunting?
And this is one of my favorites. We say, what is the best strategy for hunting bucks during the rut? And what I tell people is absolutely, if it's November, get in the woods. In the woods, and even if you're not seeing much, don't get discouraged and leave, because bucks are cruising and traveling at that point.
Yeah.
Looking for deer. So you literally could have be skunked one day and be covered up the next. Or, maybe the biggest buck on the area you're hunting got killed, or you haven't seen many nice bucks. And literally, the biggest deer in the county could come cruising by the next day. So if it's November, get in the woods, and don't get discouraged if you're not seeing much, because it literally can turn around for you, with a snap of your fingers. Now, I think there are some strategies we can use with that. If deer are, if it's a pre-rut and just building up to that, those does still want to feed as much as possible. So I think hunting food sources to find those does is very smart for finding bucks. Once that starts to slow a little bit, and you're really into the late October, early November, where bucks are just really on their feet and cruising like crazy, I would definitely get into an area that affords a place for deer to travel through, whether it's saddles on a hill or a ridge line or something that really some type of travel corridor, because that will up your odds of seeing more deer during the course of the day, and particularly deer from other areas that you may have not seen before, or maybe your neighbor's been watching for a while that you get an opportunity at. And then once we get in, literally from the 10th of November on, when deer tend to really be with a bunch of does and activity starts to slow down, or at least sightings, then I would forget about the food sources part of it, and I would just get into the thickest areas that I could. So the last part of that then is kind of at the tail end of when most of those does are bred. What that means is, in many cases, bucks have not fed for close to a month, or ate very little for about a month. And there's lots of studies showing, that a buck can lose 20 to 25% of its body weight during the rut. They're just not eating. So at the tail end of that, if you have food sources, they can be dynamite, because after all that running and chasing, and before winter really gets here, bucks know, I have to eat. So food sources then become great, and particularly, if it's really cold, that drives deer to them even earlier in the day, which is great for hunters. So what you end up then with is those bucks knowing they have to eat, getting back on food, and those last few does that might not be bred yet, that also need to get back on that food. So food sources at the end of the rut can be really, really good. Now, you guys are lucky, and I'm lucky being, this far north, that in most years when we get toward the tail end of the rifle season, we can have a bunch of snow, and it can be very cold, which is a good thing from a deer hunting perspective. The thing that kills us more than anything else is a warm, easy late fall, early winter, where deer just are not driven to those cold weather food sources. So if we can get a good cold snap and a normal winter for us, So that food at the end of that rut can be absolutely dynamite.
Yeah, that's wonderful. How do you think, just thinking about like public, if you're looking, okay, say you're driving around public and you see that what kind of food sources should I be looking for? Like standing corn, or I guess because like I don't know anything about farming or anything. What do I need to look for?
Well, a corn perspective, deer like to eat corn in the fall and winter, and it's most attractive once acorns or any other native foods like that are gone or mast is used up. So corn is real high energy, which means it's perfect for deer once we're into severe winter weather. So, lots of snow and or cold weather really drives deer to corn. Until that, okay. I have standing corn every year that literally, deer would walk a mile past and not even touch it to get to either, some green winter wheat or some clover that still might be green or some alfalfa, as long as it's not really cold yet. So I always do plant corn only because once that cold snap really hits, it just sucks them in. So if there is anything that is still green, alfalfa, clover, anything like that, that will be more preferred than the corn. Soybeans are number one for deer. So if somebody has planted soybeans or still has standing beans with the pods, deer will be in those both late fall as well as into the winter. But brassicas, which are the big leafy turnips and rape and kale and that kind of thing, that essentially is a cold weather food, and corn are probably the two best cold winter foods for us in the north to really drive deer in and make for some exciting action for us as hunters.
Okay, that's good to know. So we had a question from someone on Twitter, Tom Tenseth, who is at SM Game Safari on Twitter. He asks, can a buck's age fool you during the rut? What to look for that might help make sure he's like a 4.5-year-old plus in age?
Oh, it certainly can, and that's a great question. The best time to estimate age on the hoof, and I say estimate because, it's not an exact science, but, we can get awfully close with a little bit of practice on the vast majority of the deer. So the best time to do that is right before the rut, at that peak or the pre-rut time period where the bucks have literally gained as much weight as they're going to have for the whole year. They have the biggest change in all their body characteristics, big, heavy neck, big bellies. That is the single best time to estimate age. During the course of the rut, depending on how hard they're running then, they are losing weight literally on a daily basis. And I have a series of photos that I use in some of the seminars that I give showing a 5 or 6.5-year-old buck pre-rut, then the exact same buck a month later, and he looks at most 3.5 years old. There's at least a 2-year age difference. I followed that buck for a number of years, so I know exactly how old he is and was in those pictures. So, during the rut, early in it, they still look about what they are, but toward the end of it, they absolutely can look at least 1 and sometimes 2 or more years younger just from the weight loss that they experience while they're just on their feet all the time.
That is interesting. And Eric with the Where to Hunt podcast, episode 25, Aging White-tailed Deer by Sight. That was a really good episode as well. Folks, if you guys don't subscribe to the Where to Hunt podcast, go to iTunes or Stitcher Radio, find, subscribe, check out episode 25, because that was a very informative episode as well about aging white-tailed deer.
Well, that's good. And we actually did one about the rut, too. I think that was right in that same clump of episodes with a DNR wildlife ecologist. I think you might have referred him to me, Kevin Wallenfang, if that rings a bell.
Oh, yeah.
So that was a good one, too.
He's super nice. Cool.
Well, Kevin's a good guy. I'm sure he's a good...
Yeah.
He's a great biologist, big-time deer hunter. So, he'd have been a good one to talk about that with.
Yeah, the knowledge I've gotten from these podcasts just by talking to people like yourself, Kev, it's unreal. So you and Kevin put together, I feel like, my gosh, you guys have so much knowledge to offer. I really appreciate the fact that you guys are able and willing to talk on these podcasts like this. It's such a value add for the listeners.
I swear, whenever anybody asks me why I podcast, I swear to you, I say I'm complete transparency. It's 100% self-serving because I want to talk to these guys and I want to know what's going on and what is in their head.
Nothing wrong with that. That's how you learn and get better.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Man, you can learn from other people's mistakes, so it's kind of nice when you don't have to make them yourself.
Yeah. Well, Kip, any final thoughts that you might want to tell the listeners about hunting the rut? Anything you think we might have missed?
I don't think so. Just reiterate, get in the woods in November and hunt every day that you can in November. So buy some flowers or whatever you need to for the missus if she does not hunt with you. And if she does, grab her and have a date in the woods. So if it's November, you absolutely should be in the woods if you're in the north.
Perfect. That's right. You can't kill it if you're not out there.
That's right.
Yeah, I think about that a lot.
All right. I know, right? And you can find the QDMA on Twitter at the QDMA and, of course, QDMA.com. There's a lot of articles there, too. You guys have a crazy amount of information out there for people to read.
Well, yeah, we try to keep everybody well-stocked with anything deer-related or habitat-related. So if you make it all the way through all the articles on our website, you'd be very, very well-read.
All right, Kip. Thank you so very much for taking the time to come on. We very, very, very much appreciate it.
Absolutely. Good talking with you and Eric, and good luck to both of you this fall in the woods.
Hey, thanks.
Yeah,
I'm still here.
Okay, cool. That was good.
That was really good. He knows a lot of stuff. That's awesome.
I've had him on a couple of times, and he just blows my mind. The QDMA guys are just the best. Like,
they're scientists. It's unreal. At least that guy was.
I know. Yeah, they all are. They're all like certified wildlife biologists, and they're just the nicest guys. They just want to impart the knowledge that they've learned, and they've never, not a one of them, because I've had 3 or 4 of them on my podcast, and Kip twice, Lindsay Thomas twice. They always have drop everything to come on and
it's so cool.
Interview. Yeah.
Well,
so I really like working with them.
It's a good line of thought.
Well, let's tell the listeners where they can find more about you.
Well, you can find. Actually, I just redid the Where to Hunt website. It's www.wheretohuntapp.com, and that could be the word 2 TO or the number 2, and that'll get you there. And in fact, I am in beta mode testing for the release or the new release update for the Where to Hunt app, which is very exciting. It's almost finished. We're just working on the Android version right now. The iOS version is essentially done. So,
oh, cool.
It should be releasing very soon.
Tell the listeners who haven't listened to previous. Yeah, we did have you on the podcast because we talked about the app. That's right.
Things have changed. It's evolving. So I actually had a lot of feedback. I think we got about 10,000 downloads in the first year, which sounds great for me, but in the grand scheme of things, that's a drop in the bucket. That's nothing. I think we're at 14,000 now. And of those downloads and users, I had a lot of feedback about people that were kind of not real thrilled about sharing their spot publicly. So I've listened, and one of the new features that's currently working on the beta version is a private group feature where you can create your own private party. So you can still use it to track your friends, loved ones, hunting party, and know where each other are without showcasing that to the rest of the public hunting community. So that's exciting. In addition to that, it also will have what we're calling live tracking. So it won't be a static check-in. It'll be a live moving dot with a trail marker showing where they've come from and where they're going. So kind of like Uber, when you open up Uber and you can see the taxi cabs moving around, just like that.
Yeah. Excellent.
So
that sounds wonderful.
Very exciting.
Yeah. Just as from a female safety perspective, I've used your app, but there have been a couple of times where I was nervous.
Someone like,
yeah. Public land and whatever.
Yep.
Just people are.
It can get a little sketchy, but
scary.
I've had more people tell me that they've opened the app, noticed that there were other hunters there, and went somewhere else as a result, than people telling me that they've opened the app, checked in, and people have come to them. I had one instance of that where the guy said he lost his spot. So when I asked him, well, why were you using the app if that was a concern? He said, my wife wanted me to use it so she could see where I was. Sounds like you got to take this issue up with her.
Right.
But I'm glad that she got good use out of it to know that her husband was in the woods and not somewhere else.
Yeah, no kidding.
So
I can definitely imagine that because that's what I would do. I'd be like, oh, there's somebody over here. Let's not bust up their hunt and go somewhere else.
Yep. And that's the big thing. And I like it for safety. My dad, I joke, he's getting old, but he's not that old. I just like to bust his chops. But he's clumsy. I'm clumsy. We're clumsy people. It runs in the family. So I figure, well, I know he's somewhere in that direction, but I don't know where he is. So he checks in. I see, okay, that's him. And now I know if something happens, if I don't hear from him, if he doesn't check in with me when he gets situated in a stand or when he's getting down, I know where to go find him. Yeah,
that's great. That is wonderful, actually. Can you access the app? So like that wife, can you access it from home while you're out there?
Yep. So she can access it. I mean, you're going to have a general idea of where you think that person is. But once you have that, you should know, you have a good idea of where they're at. And they can always send you a screenshot of that too once they're checked in. So that way you know that you're looking at the right dot. Because it is private information. Even with the group feature, you create a generic screen name. So it doesn't have to be Eric Clark. It can be, I use E.T. Buck, actually. And no one will know that that's me. He'll just say that that's someone. But so you can remain anonymous and still kind of just claim your spot, so to speak.
No, that is perfect. Like, just thinking back to like when I spent the night out in the canyon in South Dakota lost, my husband could have logged in and been like, wow, she didn't call me tonight. Let me just see where she is. Hey, what is she doing by the Missouri River? Seriously.
My fiance got lost on a trail run last year at this time. It was just on my Time Hop app, her posting about it. And I was stuck at work. The sun was going down. Like, there was no way I was going to make it there in time. And I said, check in on my app. I'll see where you are and I'll tell you where to go. She did it. I saw her. I said, you have to open up your compass app on your phone. Well, you still have battery life. Head this direction. It was like west. And then you'll hit the road and then you'll know where you are. And she did it and it worked. Yeah. So then I was on the radio show with Dan Small, Outdoor Wisconsin, and told him the same story. He thought it was pretty funny.
That is cool. Well, cool. Everybody should go. Oh, wait. It's not available for Android yet, right?
Well, the old version's still out there. It's free. It's functional. It works. It's what I call the skeleton version. It was our first. It was version 1. So it's still there and it's still functional. People are using it. You can still see where people are statically. However, I can tell you that the new one is highly, highly, highly improved. And the longest wait time will be waiting for Apple to approve that. They take a while to get stuff up on the App Store. So
when do you think it'll be available?
I was hoping it'd be available by now, but technology and development doesn't always go as planned. So as far along as we are, I would expect absolutely for sure by gun season, I would say mid-October is realistic.
Then how much is it?
It's free. So the public version is entirely free. Everything about it is free except for the private group feature, which I haven't picked a price for that yet, but I'm thinking something along the lines of cheap, like 99 cents. So if you if you want to keep your spot private, or just, disclosed or whatever, or undisclosed, I should say, then you'll pay to use that feature.
And if they download it now, will they get the update automatically when it comes out?
Yes, it'll be just like any other app where it says you go into if it's the Play Store or the iOS App Store, it'll tell you that's available for an update.
There you go. Everybody go download the app so that when the newfangled schnazzy version comes out, you've already got it.
There you go. We'd appreciate it.
All right, Eric, thanks so much for coming on and playing co-host with me.
Yeah, that's fun. We'll have you on ours.
I never have. Yeah. I never have a co-host. This is awesome.
That is awesome. I don't either. It's always like when I go by myself, I talk way too fast. I don't take pauses or breaths, so it gets kind of weird, and I just keep, just word vomiting out of my mouth.
I know. Well, I don't most of the people don't even know what's going on with me anymore because I'm like, well, hi, Carrie. So what did you do this weekend? Well, Carrie, let me tell you. you know?
Yeah, that's hilarious. Well, we'll be talking to you soon, I'm sure.
And that'll do it. Thanks so much for listening. Don't forget to find the show on iTunes. Just search for HuntFishTravel Podcast. Hit the subscribe button. You can also follow me on social media. Just go to HuntFishTravel.net and click on the social media icon of your choice. The only one that's not listed there is Periscope. You can always find me on Periscope. Same Twitter handle, @CarrieZilka. Until next time. Doing this with my fat fingers. Why isn't it calling? Hello?
Nothing. It's just kind of...
Let me try that again. Oh, I think I dialed the wrong number. That's why. Probably calling Saudi Arabia or something. Skype's
I just sent a payment to Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I got a call from PayPal. Is this you or is this fraud? I'm like, no, that's me. Just paying their wages.